Hey there, Bookkeeping Side Hustle community. So glad you're here. We've got another live stream today. We're calling this one Beyond Basic Bookkeeping, Lessons from a Nonprofit Niche. And so our guest instructor is Megan Tarnow. She's a friend of mine. I first probably started to follow her online like quite a few years ago. She had like her own firm called Mobius. She seemed smart. She seemed cool. And I could tell that she was someone I should follow. Well, then I see that she wins these awards for QuickBooks, and then she successfully sells her business, which is like super varsity move. Then I got the pleasure of meeting her in person, and we're also now on the board of the Accounting Cornerstone Foundation together. So like our lives have connected in a lot of ways. And I've always had it in the back of my mind that I wanted her to teach about nonprofits, nonprofit niche. That was the niche of her firm. She's like a real practitioner, a real expert. And I asked, and she agreed, but then she was like, but I am not just going to teach about niching and nonprofits. She wanted to teach just the more fundamental concepts of how important it is to really know bookkeeping before you jump, in the deep end in a difficult niche like nonprofits, or any niche really. And so she's going to use this as nonprofits almost as like a case study, y'all, to teach some basic bookkeeping principles, philosophies that she has about how to serve clients. She said she's sick of seeing people just thinking you connect a bank feed and that means you're doing bookkeeping. So I said, okay, the microphone is yours. And so I'm excited to learn from her today. She's going to be our teacher. We will be able to y'all can ask questions in the chat, and I'll field those for her. And we'll follow up. The end will always be Q&A like normal. And so we have some ways to connect with her. Those are in the description of the YouTube channel. If you like what she says, either from just the general bookkeeping stuff or the nonprofit expertise stuff, follow her. She's super, super nice, super smart. She wants to help us elevate the profession, y'all. So subscribe to this channel, my channel, if you are listening for the first time. And I think we're ready to get started, Megan. So why don't we let you, I'm going to share your slides right now so you can do a more formal intro. I'm sure I left off some of your expertise and knowledge, and I'm just excited to learn from you. So talk to us about Beyond Basic Bookkeeping and who you are.
Okay, I'll talk about me for a minute. As Kate said, kind of the same, right? I noticed her on social media. I'm like, she is funny. She is smart. I am going to follow her. Like, she got me up walking at 6 a.m. in the morning when we were at a conference together. We had the best time just hiking around. I would do that anytime, anywhere.
For sure.
I'm like, maybe like some of your people in your group, Kate, I'm an accidental bookkeeper. Like, I did not set out to do this. I was actually a theater major, and once upon a time, back when dinosaurs ruled the earth, right, I got this job as the office manager for a nonprofit theater company. And QuickBooks was new, but they had already destroyed it. And so I got to be part of the process of, they were working with a fabulous consultant to restructure that data file, right? And then we had a board treasurer who was the CFO of a major publishing company. He's like, here's what I need to see every month, and here's what it's telling me. And the auditor came in with like the green and white ledger paper, and he's like, here's the adjusting journal entries I need you to make, and here's why. Okay. And I was always like a why person. Like, I wanted, like, I wasn't an actress, I was a directing major. So my focus was really like, how do all the parts go together? And like, seriously, if you told me at the time I'd spend my career in accounting, I would have said you were insane. Yeah, but I learned early, like, it's not math, right? It's puzzles. And it's like, how do we put all the pieces together in order to tell the story? So this is like, if you guys care, you can Google me. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on who I am or what I do, but like, that's where I'm coming from. Okay.
So I love the accidental bookkeeper. I think I'm that way too. You probably more than me. I mean, I had probably at least had some accounting classes. But that's what I love about this too. I love it's not math, it's puzzles. But that's a great testimony to how all kinds of people can make a living in this industry if you just kind of find your spot. Probably I'm guessing there was a reason why you built your firm in the nonprofit niche, just because of your personality and your background too. So you're like leveraging who you are with this
Yep.
new thing. You found out how to, earn a living.
Yep.
So that maybe you wouldn't have had the success you had had if it had been, if you were majoring in real estate construction. You would have been like, gross, not for me, right? But you've found a way to still love this thing that you had to learn, right? So
And like all of us, right? I did like I kind of did everything backwards in a way. Like, a lot of people go into accounting or bookkeeping and then they find a niche, and I did it the other way. I chose my niche and then decided to go into accounting.
yeah,
But I did some construction, I did some other things early on, but I really wanted to help this sector.
cool.
And so, yeah, been there from the get-go. And what I discovered is that, I mean, I'm both proud and kind of embarrassed about this because I've never actually taken an accounting class that I got high school or college credit for, but I've taken a ton of, and I feel like I'm a knowledge sponge, right? I want to
Yeah.
understand the rules and how all of the things function. So, and I think that can be our superpower
Mm-hmm.
as bookkeepers, right? If we both understand the accounting and we understand the tool we're using, we can like really do amazing things for our clients. Okay.
For sure.
So let me hit some slides and just interrupt whenever things happen, but because these are not super exciting slides by themselves.
That looks exciting. That looks
Look at
exciting.
that. I know I Googled, I was looking for a photo that was for boss. I liked him a lot. So one of the weird things about nonprofits is they have no owners. Like nobody owns a nonprofit, no matter what the founder might try to tell you, right? Like they don't own it. They answer to the board. So what becomes really important when I'm working with a new client is I have to understand all the stakeholders in the business.
Stakeholders. Okay.
Who are all the people this nonprofit has to answer to? Are they driven by volunteers? Is it just the board? Do they have a paid executive director? There's also, the IRS. What Form 990 do they have to file? Right? Because little tiny ones under 50,000 just send in a postcard and nobody else really cares. Bigger ones like the 990 gets more complex as the organization grows.
Mm-hmm.
Some nonprofits are subject to audit, and that's based on the states. The states determine the
Okay.
audit threshold for the nonprofits in their state. But so much depends, right, on who we have to report to.
Yeah.
And I think that's one point that translates to all of us, regardless of what kind of client we're working with, is like who who are all the people that are going to care about um, about the work we're doing? Like who has to use this information? And the structure is going to change depending on who we determine it's going to be, right?
The structure of the bookkeeping, not the structure of the organization, right?
Right. I mean, not the structure of the, I'm going to cover this again, but I think, we talk about bookkeeping, right? And all of it now is, I hope everybody's using some kind of digital tool. Maybe it's QuickBooks, maybe it's, FreshBooks, maybe it's Xero, maybe it's NetSuite, whatever. But the reason we moved away from paper ledgers and just Excel spreadsheets is that a data file turns the data into information, but that in order to get usable information, we have to think about how we're structuring the way
Yep.
we capture, the way that data is structured. Because otherwise, I'll get to that and cover it again. But I'm sure you've looked into some files, right? Where
Oh
it's
yeah.
just like, okay, there's a whole bunch of stuff there, but it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
It's like slam poetry or something. It's just like, okay, all the words are out there, but like, I don't know how to make sense of that.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So
Y'all comment if y'all have ever seen a bookkeeping file that looks like slam poetry. I think I'm going to like put that on social media, but it kind of hits. I like it.
right when I think about that, it's like, okay, they have this I'm gonna cover it again. Hold that thought. I'll wait
Okay.
till I
Okay.
actually get there. So I'll get a slide that has no meaning anymore.
All right.
All right, so no owners. The other weird thing is that nonprofits are almost always corporations. They're actually like C Corps. I mean, they can actually be, so they're registered in the state, but the nonprofit status is granted by the federal government.
Okay.
And
Huh.
and under the 501c whatever it is in the tax code, there's like 26 different flavors of nonprofit, from veterans organizations to, I don't even know what they are, but the ones we think about the most are 501c3, which is a charity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only one of all of those flavors that can accept tax deductible donations.
But there are lots of other ways that they don't accept tax deductible donations, but they still need nonprofit accounting and still file the 990.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Right. Right.
Y'all,
They're
this is
still
all
under
new
that
for
tax
me.
code. And
Yeah.
really and really the benefit of that tax status means that they don't pay income tax.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, I mean, and this sounds like pretty like varsity stuff where I know you're going to keep teaching us, but we definitely need like more training on like these specifics. I mean, this is kind of wild. I would not have been able to say nonprofits are usually corporations. I think I would have been able to say nonprofits have no owners. I don't know that I could have said that 5 years ago. I have learned that, but I didn't know this. So this is not just like your average bare bookkeeping. I mean, I do bookkeeping all day, and I didn't know this slide. So everybody, like, make sure you. Megan teaches this stuff. She has a group, a Facebook group. I'll put that in the chat. I know before the week in this, she's also creating like more formal learning programs. But at the very least, you got to join her Facebook group and follow her on social to learn all these cool details. So keep going, keep teaching.
And I think that's something we don't think about, right? But what it means is, and again, there's those variables where like, okay, well, if we're really tiny, we don't actually, maybe it doesn't matter. But as the nonprofit grows, we need to know that like the accounting is essentially corporate accounting with nonprofit stuff laid over the top, and how that relates to just everybody in any, doing any kind of bookkeeping. It's helpful to know the business structure of the client,
for sure,
right? Because we're gonna keep books differently for somebody filing a Schedule C on their 1040 than we are for someone who is a S corp,
yes,
or somebody that wants to go public and is going to be a C corp someday. Right? All of that is a variable. So yeah, knowing that's important.
I put two links for her, y'all, in the chat for right now, LinkedIn and her nonprofit Facebook group. All right, so they're usually corporations. This is getting into the like legal tax structure stuff. We're still not talking about QuickBooks yet, though.
I don't know that we're even. I'm not going to assume that everybody's on QuickBooks. So one of the next thing is that GAAP means generally accepted accounting principles, like the way we're supposed to be doing the accounting for nonprofits is accrual. And what I find in the US is that the vast majority of bookkeepers have no knowledge of accrual at all.
Okay.
Like in Canada, small business like also keep their books on the accrual basis. So like for them, it's like not a big deal, easy peasy. But we're so used to keeping our books on the cash basis that this is a big shift.
Yeah.
And I'm going to argue that, maybe once a business grows beyond a Schedule C, accrual accounting is valuable for them as well. Like it's helpful to know who we owe, not just who we've paid. Right? And it's helpful to know who owes us, not just the money that's come in the bank. Right? And it's possible we're allowed to keep our books on, like we can keep QuickBooks or FreshBooks or whatever on the accrual basis and still pay tax on a cash basis.
Yes, yes.
Right. So thinking about and it's not harder for the most part.
Not if you're using a software, right? The software has that, like it's built to do that.
It has the capability built in, and then just knowing like, here's the things that are different that I might have to make or have to talk to the tax preparer about making a manual adjustment on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it provides a lot better information. Um, and I still find, and again, maybe it matters the size of the organization. Like if I'm, doing the books for a Schedule C and it's all like they're paying tax cash basis and everything's pretty simple. Yeah, maybe we're keeping the books on a cash basis too. So if a nonprofit's only filing a postcard, or if they're a house of worship that often does not have to file a tax form at all, like I don't care how you keep
Okay.
your books
Okay.
because nobody's looking at it. But if your goal is to become a professional organization, to grow and to have a bigger impact, like getting that solid foundation from the beginning is really useful. And then we're not paying income tax anyway.
Right. So you don't
You
even
know?
need the toggle. You're just using the more advanced accounting method to build your strategy.
Yeah. And do you feel like your folks are familiar with that?
Well, I was going to ask the folks watching live, and if you're watching after the fact, you can kind of comment on this, and I'll loop Megan in if there's like some burning questions, or follow up in the Facebook group too, y'all, if y'all are watching this later. But so I'll say that all of the clients I serve are cash basis tax filers.
Okay.
I've niched in FreshBooks. It's small. It's for small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
It is Canadian, so it actually is a better at accrual accounting than it is cash accounting, because it's like accrual is where they start. They're all
See?
that's where their
Yeah,
brains
Canada.
go. That's where their brains go. And so yeah, I would say I think it is hard for me to envision working with clients who would need this. So I'm admitting that, y'all. But I've built a successful business, serving cash basis clients. But the longer I'm here in running my firm, there's the common refrain that like accrual accounting is necessary for people who want to have serious accounting and serious books and serious strategy. And so I would say I'm probably pretty. I'm like that person who needs to be hearing that message from you, and that you're wanting to get out there. So I'm like, yeah, I'm ripe student, and certainly not above like hearing these messages and being convinced of these things that you teach and these beliefs that you have. It means you got to study harder. We have to actually keep learning. Like, what's the point? Following the cash for me, and maybe it's because I'm an American, like, but it feels pretty intuitive to me, and so it's comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, there's parts of it that get really hard and are very hard. Like people understand cash, right? They understand cash in, cash out. But again, in nonprofits, even cash is not cash because it comes in two flavors, right? Is both with or without donor restrictions. So even if we have $500 in the bank, it doesn't mean we can use it.
Okay.
Which we'll cover a little bit. I won't go too deep on that. But like, I was sold on accrual. Like, I live in a place where there's a really high level of nonprofit accounting knowledge and expectation. So I was kind of like grounded from the very beginning. But midway in my career, I started working with this theater, and they'd moved over, they'd restarted their data file, still on desktop at that point, and their office manager left, and they're like, do you just have any capacity to keep the train on the tracks while we hire a new person? And I came in and I'm like, do you realize you have not reconciled your bank account in 6 months? And they're like, sure we have. We get reports. I'm like, no, you haven't. And that's why things keep bouncing. But they also weren't entering, like they had a big stack of bills on the table that they couldn't pay that weren't reflected in their QuickBooks file, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So when their board was looking at their financials and trying to make decisions, board and management, like they only had half the data.
Okay.
So they were kind of flying blind, and they're like, okay, we can write checks. It's like, well, no, because you haven't reconciled your bank account and you've got all these transactions that haven't even flowed through there. So the money you think you have is not what you've actually got.
Yeah.
Anyway, hot mess.
I'm sure you were able to help
Accrual's
them.
a blast.
Yes.
The day that their unrestricted net assets went Like they were in the red and they didn't even know it. And so when they finally like pulled that into the black, we had a little party. It was awesome.
Way to go.
It was a happy day. All right. Nonprofits have different revenue models, right? We tend to think of contributions, like people just give them money and they go do their thing. But that's not it, right? A lot of them have earned revenue. They might provide services that people pay them for. They might have a bookstore. They might have like a theater is going to do performances and it might have a concession stand. They might get individual donations. They might get corporate foundation. Some of it's unrestricted, some of it's restricted. And so understanding where the money comes from to drive the organization is going to impact everything from the tech stack to the, file structure to the workflow. And I think that's true for, nonprofits, but any business, right? You want to understand, what do they do? What do they charge for? How do people pay them?
That's like the mapping to different income accounts, I guess. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it can be income accounts, but also like, I don't know, you guys have people, and maybe like our nonprofits, they're just like wanting to get those contributions however people are willing to give it to them.
Yes.
So they've got PayPal and they've got Stripe and they've got Square and they've got, I don't know,
Zelle.
GoFundMe, and they've got Zelle, and they've
yes.
got, and Tip Jar, and like, I don't know what all the different things are, but like knowing what they've got and like where it lives and then like what the flow is for each of those different income streams is imperative when you're structuring it and trying to price it, trying to figure out what you're doing.
Grants too. You might get like
grants,
a big
for sure.
Grant, yeah, fat wad that you have to do certain things for, right?
Right.
Yeah, lots of, okay. But I mean, that seems comparable to like a business that has different products that they sell, or
absolutely, and
like
different like lines of business, right? And different ways that people can pay them. So just knowing, for all of us, right, asking that question up front. Because a lot of you guys ever have times like they just forget to tell you about that one thing that they do?
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Oh yeah, we just got a grant from the city. Okay, thanks.
Well, and like for the nonprofit, again, accrual basis, right? So I'm actually teaching a whole series on this in April because revenue's tricky and complicated. But if we determine the grant is unconditional, we're required to book the whole thing when it's promised.
Okay.
So there's a difference between a condition and a restriction, just for funsies. So if it is an unconditional but restricted grant, say I'm giving you $5,000 over the next 5 years, the nonprofit has to book that whole $500,000 as of the date of the grant agreement letter.
Okay.
And what I end up seeing a lot is that they just book it when they get that first 100,000, and the other 400,000 is a secret that nobody knows about.
Yes.
Until it magically appears in the bank account, and
I see.
And again, if they're not audited, they can kind of get away with it, but it's not right.
Speaking of you saying you're teaching this, are you teaching that in the new nonprofit crew program?
I might give them a discount, but it's going to be a public thing. I spent a bunch of yesterday with my friend ChatGPT trying to figure out how do I set that up in Calendly so that people can register and I can accept payment for it.
Okay.
So it's going to be a 3-part series where people can, apparently there's no way to sell the bundle, so they can buy however many of the 3 that they want.
I don't have direct links for that, y'all. So all the more reason to follow her on our socials. But I do have the program, the ongoing program that she's calling the Nonprofit Crew. I'll put that in the comments now too. It's trying to huddle accountants and bookkeepers who want to be thinking about these hard things. And because nothing stays the same. As soon as you get how to book one grant, well, some other rich person's going to come up with another way to give grants, and you're going to need to talk it through. And how do we record it? And so that is kind of an ongoing private way to stay connected with Megan. But there's lots of good free ways too. So that's in the chat now too.
Lots of free ways. Okay. This is where I was going to talk about that file structure, Kate. So nonprofits are required to report by function.
Okay.
So we have to report by natural category and by function. So there's, by default, there's like this matrix. And when we say natural category, that's essentially the chart of accounts, right? It's the
Okay.
what. If you're thinking grammar, it's the nouns. Right?
Okay.
What did you buy? I bought printing. I bought postage. I bought independent contractor services. I bought office supplies. I bought payroll, right? And we have a tendency to think that everybody's their own special, unique unicorn. But basically, when it comes to those, nouns, the things, it's pretty much the same,
Okay.
right? You might blow up different categories where, I don't know, a theater might want more breakdown of who they're paying salaries or contractors for.
Yes, I can see
But,
that. Yep.
but somebody else it can be pretty condensed, but then in function is where we're different. So function is, for nonprofits, we have to track our programs. Like, what do we do that fulfills our charitable purpose, plus administration and fundraising? But I would think even small business can benefit from that, right? What are the cost centers in this business? Do they have different lines of business? What does it cost to acquire a customer? What does it cost to run just sort of the overhead to make sure this thing continues to exist, sort of stuff. So it's comparable. But understanding that allows us to structure the data file, right? And I always think, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say this sounds really like advanced, like not for like maybe probably shouldn't be our first bookkeeping client. And so then
It's
what I'm
enough here.
thinking is, aren't nonprofits often broke? And so can we charge what we need to charge if they're barely making it? This
I
is
mean,
I don't know. So that's where I'm
yeah.
going. I'm thinking about the like everybody's got a little nonprofit and like they're like there has to be people who
And,
make a
and
lot
I
of
see
money.
that advice in other groups, right? It's like, oh, I want to get experience. I'll go volunteer for a nonprofit. And part of me just screams, like,
Okay.
but I do make, which is part of the foundation of the Facebook group. I've got a bunch of resources that are just in, like, the people in there are super smart. And I throw free resources in there, like the data, the whole file structure I start with is just in the group files,
Okay.
right?
And Penny's coming in here to say, Kate, not all nonprofits are small and broke. So I
Right. And
appreciate
plenty
that.
of them are large and have money. And here's a super exciting thing. Like, y'all, I hear my friends who just do small business complain all the time that, like, they provide these financials and nobody seems to care. Oh my God, our people care.
Okay.
They are looking at them. They are asking good questions. They are using them to drive the organization because of those stakeholders that we've got.
Okay. Well, there,
You
there you
know,
have it. So you got just, I mean, but that's the truth is like the answer to myself is, well, Kate, there's really crummy small business clients and there's really
yeah,
good small business
there's good ones.
clients. And,
Like,
ones that can afford to pay what we're worth for this hard stuff that we're going to sell to them because we know the value of it. We know that
right.
they need to do these reports by function and they need to book all $500,000 so it's not mysteriously hiding. Like they're not waiting for the grant to show up in the bank account. So the truth is it's like you can go broke being a nonprofit bookkeeper or you can make a great living being a nonprofit bookkeeper. I don't have experience in that, but I can just imagine that's the chastisement I'm giving myself. Like, of course it's the same.
Well, like anything, like there's people who are really good at what they do, and there's people that are like adequate at what they do, and there are people who should not be doing what they do.
Yes, they need another calling.
Regardless of the industry. Yeah. Yeah. And okay, I popped. We went forward. Let's do it. I mean, I
Do
think
it.
one of the challenges, like, I think regardless of the industry we're working in, like, part of the value that we bring, like, this is hard work. Like, running a business, I don't care what it is, if it's a nonprofit, if it's a small business, it's a lemonade stand, if you're doing it right, it's hard. Um, and ideally, one of the things that we can bring is, like, we're getting the transactions in there, whatever, But if we can figure out a way to then step back and be 10,000 feet and help the business owner or the ED or the board look farther down the road and see what's coming, right? To use the connections that we've got as we're in these communities talking about what's happening. I mean, the day-to-day bookkeeping is super important, but it's table stakes. Like, it's foundational. Like, everyone should be able to expect their bookkeeper to get the data into the right buckets. But the part that they need our help with is, what does it mean?
Yeah.
You know, if you hand me these financials, like, what does it mean? Am I okay? Do I need to make a change?
Right.
You know, and I don't know if you can see, it's basically the same picture, but this time there's two people.
Okay.
And they're walking together. Like, I think the transition, like, I called the bookkeepers in my firm frontline data defenders, because like they were responsible for making sure the right stuff got in the right place. But the thing that really makes a difference to our clients, the thing that makes them sticky, the things that they would cross the highway to work with us and leave a shoe behind because they were running so fast and dodging the cars, is knowing that we care about them. Right? Like, we know how hard it is to run a business. A lot of times, like, that's a thing we can bring to our conversations with them. Right? Because they're doing it too. I had a conversation with some other nonprofit accountants this morning. They're like, I don't know how to put on my website that part of what I do is therapy.
Marriage
Right?
counseling. I say marriage counseling.
Absolutely, right? And like, in the
Yes.
nonprofit space, we're talking to the ED, and there's nobody else in their organization. You're finding this with your small business owners, even if they've got employees and stuff, there's nobody else. Like, they've got employees who they have to be strong for. In my nonprofits, they've got a board they have to answer to, but they don't necessarily have anybody they can just like bounce things off of and, discuss ideas and like, okay, what if I this? What if I that? And especially when we work with multiple, businesses within the same niche, we can go, well, what I've seen other people do is, right? We bring that broader expertise to help them get out of their silo. And I just think at the end of the day, that's the hugest value add. I mean, some people might call that advisory, and maybe it is, but I think it's caring.
Okay.
And like, really looking at that business and caring about its success.
Well, and if anyone is watching this and they are that ED, or the the nonprofit staff, not trying to build a bookkeeping business, you have a special segment of your nonprofit crew for those the managers, the people running these nonprofits too. So y'all, that link is going to be in the bookkeeping the YouTube description as well. So she can help bookkeepers learn what they need to do, and then she can be that support for the actual nonprofits. So she's kind of split this new life she's leading after she's sold her firm and figuring out, what do I do with all this knowledge? So yeah, and Penny's agreeing here, Megan. She's saying yes to caring. My son and I are just getting our bookkeeping firm going. We're emphasizing personal connection and helping client understand the numbers. So yeah,
it's massive. Regardless of your niche, I think that's massive. Yeah. And you've alluded to it, Kate. I should probably tell them what the crew is, right?
Yes, tell us what the crew is. Tell us what the crew is.
So like 7 years ago, I was supposed to be speaking at a nonprofit finance conference, and there was a big snowstorm and it got snowed out. So I had like the whole afternoon free, and I was just like missing my people, right? So I started what became the QuickBooks for Nonprofits group on Facebook. And it like, we talk QuickBooks, but it's nonprofit accounting, and it everything that rolls through that. And it's grown. I think now after 7 years, it's like, I don't know, 13,000 people or something who care about nonprofit accounting. But there were always people who felt like, we want a place where we can have deeper conversations. Like, because even as firm owners, right? It's lonely to lead a firm. And I promised it
For sure.
forever. And I finally just started it this month, where it's a paid community on Circle. Most of it is shared spaces, but then there are some private spaces for nonprofit accounting pros or like firm owner kind of folks, and a little space just for the nonprofit finance staff to have a room of their own. And so this is week 3. I think we've got 35 people. It's super exciting.
Wow. Wow.
Just
Wow. Wow. That's
kicking
great.
that thing off.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And just this idea of that nonprofits can be a niche. I mean, by the end of your time, were you exclusively nonprofits? Had you gotten rid of?
I'd been not exclusively nonprofit for a while.
Okay.
And what was interesting, there were a couple things. I always felt like I was a failure, right? Because what did I know about running a business? I was accidental there too. I did not set out to have a firm. I had initially just sort of made myself a job, and we can talk about that another time if folks ever care. And I'm sort of forgetting where I'm going with that one. But
You were saying, I asked if you were nonprofit niched by the end.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's what I discovered, like when the recession hit in 2008, my business grew.
Okay.
And I think because nonprofits and exclusively nonprofit, and they're like, oh, they couldn't get away with sort of half-assing their financials anymore. Like they needed for sure to know where they stood.
Okay. So it became
I think there's a lot of
not a
opportunity.
luxury. Yeah, it was like a must have, not a nice to have. Bookkeeping was
Right.
So yeah. Well, I just the last comment that I want to say, and if y'all have questions, those of you watching live, ask them now because we're headed towards wrapping up. The last thing I wanted to say was this idea that you've mentioned, that you had a staff, that you were at close to the 2-decade mark of running this business, right? And
21 years the day I sold it.
And
to the day, actually.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And then you sold. And so
Yeah.
all on this. So like, sit down, Kate. What do you mean nonprofits are small and broke? Like you did it. You found well-paying people that provided a living for you, or then you could provide a living for someone else. And then you had a successful systems where you could sell it. And just like, this is a real niche. And I think it's a way to set yourself apart because it sounds like it's a little bit more varsity accounting, right? So if you're willing to put that knowledge in and like the learning, then yeah, you could do any kind of bookkeeping, but you're going to do this kind because very few people can. And
it's a blast, right? It keeps the neurons firing. Like there's never a dull moment. Like it's not rote, but it's it's good fun.
There's all sorts of nonprofits. It's crazy,
Oh yeah, and people have niches within that, right? Like I didn't work with houses of worship because they're beasts of their own, but plenty of people have a niche that's just there.
Yes.
You can find things that you care about. Like I loved, arts, environment, and social justice. So that's the kind of organizations we focus on.
Okay. Penny is asking, where are the best places to get more education about nonprofit accounting? So besides
there's some good stuff.
Yeah.
So Greg Bosson, who runs QuickBooks Made Easy, has he imprinted on me really early on, like before I had any idea who he was. And so everything he teaches is foundational for using QuickBooks in a nonprofit environment. There's a program called the CNAP, Certified Nonprofit Accounting Professional. I think there's a basic and an advanced, and it's a program of the AICPA nonprofit section that was focused on, it was thinking really nonprofit employees with a little bit of financial background, but it's a good thing to take as a consultant as well, just to make sure you understand the basics of what you're doing. Yeah.
Okay, Greg Bosson, the AICPA's CNAP, and
of course my Facebook group. I would get yourselves in there for sure because it's a lovely little community. I've got, if I do say so myself.
It pops into my social media feeds, and I'm in the group. I don't lean on the resource because I don't have those questions, but like I can tell that it's active. I can tell that it's helpful, and that y'all take it very seriously, but in like a smart, friendly way.
I
So
feel like it's one of the nicest rooms on Facebook, and we
yeah.
have one rule. Like a lot of
Okay.
Facebook groups have a whole list of rules. We have one rule, which is don't be the reason we need rules.
I love it. I love it.
And every once
Okay.
in a while, we'll be like, that's, and people behave. I don't know. It's good.
Yeah. All right. So follow Megan and the QuickBooks for Nonprofits group on LinkedIn. There's a few more resources for her website down below. Also check out her nonprofit crew. I would say if you're serious about niching in nonprofits, that's probably the quickest way to run instead of stumble your way into this niche, is to just make the investment and really go like whole hog and learn from a truly successful case study that she did it 21 years, sold, grew, amazing. So that's how to follow her. Any last words from you?
I think that this has been so much fun, Kate. I would, thanks for giving me the opportunity to come and talk to your people.
Yes. Okay.
Wonderful.
Well, we will we'll have you back. I'm remembering now, I should tell people I interviewed Megan, I think 2 years ago, about being a VITA tax
Oh
preparer, a
yeah,
volunteer
yeah,
tax preparer. So she is a repeat guest on the Bookkeeping
yeah.
Side Hustle show. And so y'all, that's a great way to serve. I mean, like obviously your heart of service
So
is
cool.
there. So go learn about how to be a volunteer tax preparer too, because we need to always be learning and serving, to using our our blessings to bless others. So Megan, thank you as always. You taught us a lot. You did a lot of, I think a lot of seeds were planted in my mind about just ways that we need to all be taking our job very, very seriously. Bookkeeping is serious business, and I think that's one of my main takeaways. So, and it's solving puzzles.
And I think that's a huge part. It's like, I want all the good people to come do nonprofit just because I'm greedy like that. But I think regardless, like taking our job seriously and understanding the impact we have on the clients we serve is the biggest thing I would love to have people walk away with.
All right, adios for now. We'll bring you back. I can't wait to get an update on the nonprofit crew, and we'll see the rest of the community later. Bye.
Bye.